Hey everyone, welcome. We have a truly fascinating explainer lined up for you today. We're going to treat two utterly terrifying source narratives as a sort of masterclass in digital suspense and viral storytelling. We'll be looking at a script specifically designed for viral YouTube horror and then comparing it to a highly detailed cinematic visual experiment about the effects of complete isolation. By putting these two side by side, we're going to dissect the very anatomy of fear. So let's dive right in.
I want you to just let this question sink in for a second. What would you do if your dead sister knocked on your door at 3 a.m.? This is the cold open hook of our first source narrative, which is a story titled The Girl Who Knocked at 3 a.m. It instantly plunges us into the stakes, doesn't it? We've got a lonely 16-year-old boy named Ren. He's living in a quiet village with his mother, and exactly at 3 a.m. every single light, there are three soft knocks at the door. Setting the scene with a question like this, it's a deliberate, highly effective way to just immediately trap your attention.
Now, if we pull back the curtain on the creator's mindset, it reveals a really calculated formula. The source actually explicitly outlines why a concept like this is built to capture an audience. It's not just a scary story. It's a meticulously crafted mechanism. You start with that strong first hook we literally just talked about. Then, you introduce a clear mystery, like who's knocking. You follow that up with emotional bait, which in Ren's case is the voice of his dead sister. Then you establish a memorable rule, deliver a twist ending, and finish the whole thing off with a creepy final loop. This underlying structure is exactly what makes the script practically impossible to look away from.
The absolutely crucial point in building all that tension relies on a rule. The mother gives Ren this chilling warning. If you hear knocking at 3 a.m., never open the door, even if it calls your name. By establishing this rigid, unforgettable rule for the main character, the creator completely anchors us. We all know the rule, and we all know it's eventually going to be tested, right? When Ren hears a soft, weak voice pleading, "Ren, open the door, I'm cold," and it sounds exactly like his late sister Yuna, the tension just skyrockets because we know he is being pushed to break the exact thing keeping him safe.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference in how fear can actually be constructed. On one hand, we have the auditory fear from Ren's story. The knock, 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 the familiar voice of a dead sibling, the horrifying sound of a jaw cracking open like broken glass. It is entirely driven by what we hear and the spoken dialogue. But contrast that with our second source, the skeletal mind, 30 Days of Darkness. This source is an exercise in pure visual dread. There is absolutely zero dialogue. Instead, the creator uses volumetric light rays, drifting dust particles, and hostile shadows inside a pitch-black room to build this silent, creeping psychological terror.
To put that into perspective, mapping this out reveals a terrifying chronological arc. Our source provides a meticulous timeline of a human-sized anatomy skeleton character locked in darkness for 30 days. At 30 minutes, the dark just feels wrong. The character is highly alert. Fast forward to 6 hours and the body clock completely breaks, which is illustrated by these faint, blurred clock projections as the character fights off sleep. By day 3, the shadows start lying. Distorted figures start forming where literally nothing should exist. At 2 weeks, the darkness actually comes alive, with swirling smoke. And finally, at 30 days, the subject is still physically standing, but is mentally destroyed and entirely distant. It's a complete journey of psychological breakdown. So how do they make those early stages work so well? Well, the creator relies on negative space. That's the empty areas in a cinematic composition used to dominate the frame. In the 30-minute and 6-hour marks of the darkness experiment, the skeleton character is right in the center, but the deep black corners completely swallow the framing. It's minimal, it's empty. By using this negative space, along with just a single narrow beam of cold overhead light and some realistic concrete textures, the creator establishes a serious baseline of unease. The isolation itself becomes this heavy, threatening presence wrapping right around the character.
And the creator slowly turns the environment against the character over those 30 days. It doesn't happen all at once. Initially, it's just mere stillness and floating dust in a light beam. It's pretty passive. But fast forward to the 2-week mark, and the environment starts playing tricks with faint clock-like shadows and a soft distortion in the air. By 30 days, it's actively hostile. We see swirling smoke, these shape-like voids emerging from the blackness, and dust storms whipping near the floor. The darkness shifts from being a quiet, empty room to an active, incredibly oppressive antagonist. All right, let's bring it back to the climax of our first story for a second. Ren walks to the door. His mother is screaming from behind him, "Don't open it!" But the rule is broken. The emotional bait is totally twisted. Ren opens the door to see a girl in his sister's white dress. But when she looks up, Her eyes are completely black, her smile stretches way too wide, and her jaw violently cracks open. In a voice that sounds like a dozen people speaking at once, she whispers, "Thank you for letting me in." It is a massive, terrifying payoff, and it relies entirely on subverting the emotional expectation they built up throughout the whole narrative. But the story doesn't just end with the lights going out. As we saw in the viral blueprint earlier, a true digital horror story needs a creepy final loop. So, the next morning, the door is open, the mother is crying, and Ren is just gone. But the true horror is what happens next. Every night at 3 a.m., 3 soft knocks were heard again, and this time, the voice outside sounds exactly like Ren. I mean, that is just brilliant storytelling mechanics. Turning the victim into the new monster ensures the story haunts the viewer long after it ends. The cycle simply resets, just waiting for the next person to break the rule. Let's transition back to the 30-day visual experiment to see how it achieves its own haunting finale. After 30 days of complete mental destruction, the final scene is a masterclass in cinematic framing. First, the character steps forward in a slow-motion walk out of the darkness, displaying this eerily calm, confident posture. As they do, the camera slowly tracks backward to maintain its distance, letting dust drift and smoke roll gently across the floor. Until finally, a hard backlight cuts through the dark from behind, creating a dramatic silhouette edge. It's a bold, iconic composition that feels powerful, kind of ironic, and deeply unsettling all at the same time. Which brings us to the underlying theme of both of these sources, whether it's Ren answering the door to a voice in the dark or a skeletal figure enduring 30 days of pitch-black isolation. The conclusion is the exact same. You traded sanity for survival. In these narratives, surviving the fear comes at the ultimate cost of losing oneself. It's a heavy thought, and it really leaves us to wonder, when faced with absolute terror, whether it's auditory or visual, how much of your own mind would you be willing to sacrifice just to make it through the night?